It powered the future, but couldn't own it. The system that ran the backbone of modern computing never became the company that controlled it. And that wasn't an accident. It was a choice. This is the story of the operating system that lost control.
Which I've now done, and it comes up with an opening screen.
This is the series where we explore the futures that almost existed, and the technologies that arrived too early, too late, or not at all. In quiet rooms at Bell Labs in the late 1960s, long before personal computers, long before the internet reached homes, a small group of engineers began building something they didn't fully realize would outlive them. They weren't trying to build an empire, they were trying to make their own work easier. Computers at the time were massive, expensive, and rigid. Software was tied tightly to hardware. Every machine spoke its own language. Every system was isolated. And if you wanted to move something from one machine to another, you often had to rebuild it entirely. It wasn't just inefficient, it was suffocating. So they started designing something different. A system that could be portable, modular, simple in structure but powerful in behavior. Something that treated everything, files, devices, processes, as part of a unified system. That system became Unix, and for a moment, it didn't look like much. There was no grand launch, no marketing campaign, no sense that this would define the next 50 years. Just engineers, writing code that felt cleaner. But what they were really building wasn't just software. They were building a philosophy. Unix was designed around small tools that did one thing well, connected together in flexible ways. It encouraged reuse, composability, and clarity. It made systems easier to understand, and more importantly, easier to extend. And this is where the story turns. Because Unix didn't stay inside Bell Labs. Due to antitrust restrictions, AT&T, the parent company, wasn't allowed to turn it into a commercial software monopoly, so Unix was licensed out. Cheaply, freely, almost casually, universities adopted it, researchers modified it, students learned on it, and without fully realizing it, AT&T allowed Unix to spread, not as a product, but as an idea. And ideas don't stay contained. Inside universities, Unix evolved. Different groups adapted it, extended it, reshaped it. New versions appeared, variants multiplied. What started as a single system became a family of systems, all similar, all different, all loosely connected. At first, this felt like strength, more minds, more innovation, more growth, but something subtle was being lost. Control. Unix was everywhere, but no one owned it, and that mattered more than anyone expected. Because as computing moved from labs into businesses, from research into industry, the rules began to change. Software wasn't just a tool anymore, it was a market. Companies began packaging Unix into commercial offerings. Vendors created their own versions. Compatibility started to fracture. Licensing became complicated. Standards became contested. And what had once been a shared language began to drift apart. This wasn't a technical failure. It was a structural one. Unix had power, but it didn't have a center. And in a world moving toward platforms, that was a problem. Because platforms don't just spread, they consolidate. Around the same time, another approach was emerging. Instead of distributing control, some companies focused on capturing it. They built systems designed not just to run software, but to define the environment around it, to create ecosystems where developers, users, and hardware all depended on a single authority. And this is where Unix started to lose the future it had created. It was too open to dominate, too fragmented to unify, too early to understand what it needed to protect.
Computers are supposed to make life easier. About 1 in 3 American households has bought that theory and purchased a PC.
While Unix variants competed with each other, something else was happening. The idea of Unix kept spreading into academia, into networking, into early internet infrastructure, and eventually into something new, Linux. Built in the early 1990s, inspired heavily by Unix principles, Linux took the philosophy and pushed it even further. Open source, freely distributed, collaborative by design. It didn't try to control the ecosystem, it let the ecosystem form around it. And this is where the irony deepens. Linux succeeded in places Unix couldn't: servers, infrastructure, the internet backbone, not because it was fundamentally different, but because it arrived at the right moment and embraced its lack of control. But even that wasn't the end, because the biggest shift came later, when computing moved again, from desktops to mobile, from machines to pockets. And once again, the underlying system looked familiar. Android, built on top of Linux, carried Unix's DNA into billions of devices. The same principles, the same architecture, the same philosophy, reshaped for a new era. But this time, something had changed. Control had returned. Because Android wasn't just an open system, it was a platform guided by a company that understood what Unix never fully captured.
It's the last-minute preparations for the first ever chance teachers have had of seeing and getting their hands on all the latest technology available for schools.
If you shape the ecosystem, you shape the outcome. And that's the difference. Unix built the foundation. Others built the empires. It's easy to look back and assume this was inevitable, that Unix was always destined to fragment, that control would always concentrate elsewhere. But that's not quite true. There were moments where the path could have shifted, moments where Unix could have been unified, standardized, positioned not just as infrastructure, but as a platform. But those moments required something the system never had: a single vision of ownership. And maybe that was the point. Unix wasn't designed to dominate. It was designed to work. And it did, almost too well, because the more useful it became, the harder it was to control. The more widely it spread, the less any single entity could define it. It became invisible, essential, everywhere, but not owned. And in a market increasingly shaped by ownership, invisibility comes at a cost. The cost is power. This wasn't a failure of engineering. It was a misunderstanding of the future. Unix solved the technical problem of computing, but it didn't solve the strategic problem of control. And those are not the same. Today, its influence is everywhere. In servers running the internet, in devices in your pocket, in systems you never see. But the companies that define those environments aren't Unix. They're the ones who learned what Unix didn't protect. That building the foundation isn't enough. You have to decide who owns what gets built on top of it. And somewhere else, in another deal, another decision, someone did exactly that. They didn't build the system. They controlled the terms, and that's how they took the future instead.